The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their floating seats, talking in hushed tones about the crisis that had brought them all together. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Zexathara stood at the center of the chamber, her blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights. She was a Vortanian, one of the older races in the galaxy, and her people were dying. The Krillian horde had been attacking Vortanian colonies for 3 months now, and traditional council forces were losing badly. Honored members of the council, Zexathara began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. My people face extinction. The Krillians have destroyed 12 of our colonies. Our fleets cannot match their speed or their numbers. We need help, and we need it now. Elder Veltharion floated forward in his energy form. The Luminari were beings of pure light, ancient and wise, who had helped create the Galactic Council thousands of years ago. When he spoke, his voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. We understand your pain, Ambassador, he said, but we must follow proper procedures. Our fleets are already moving to assist your people. They will arrive within 6 months. 6 months. Zexathara's voice cracked with emotion. My people will be extinct in 6 months. The Krillians are not following the old ways of war. They kill civilians. They destroy entire worlds. We need something different. A chittering sound came from the insectoid section of the chamber. Commander Klixtor of the Chithrax military clicked his mandibles together before speaking. The Council has protocols for a reason. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years by following these rules. Wars are fought with honor, with proper formations, with respect for civilians. The Krillians do not care about honor, Zexathara replied, her fists clenched. They care only about conquest. The chamber fell silent as the crystalline representative of the Zirian spoke. Their voice sounded like glass bells ringing in harmony. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? Zexathara took a deep breath. There is a young species on the edge of our territory. They call themselves humans. They have only recently developed faster-than-light travel, but their ships are surprisingly advanced. More importantly, they think differently than we do. Wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Many of the council members had heard of humans but considered them too primitive to be of any real use. Elder Veltharion's light form pulsed with concern. The humans are barely out of their home system. They know nothing of galactic warfare. They have never fought anything but each other. Exactly, Zexathara said. They are not bound by our traditions. They might see solutions that we cannot. Commander. Klixtor's antennae twitched with agitation. Their military records are disturbing. They have spent their entire history fighting wars on their homeworld. They use tactics that would be considered barbaric by our standards. Such as? Asked the Zarian representative. They target supply lines instead of engaging in honorable combat. They use deception and misdirection. They attack at night when their enemies are unprepared. They even use something they call psychological warfare, trying to break their enemy's will to fight. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and clicks and whistles of dismay. The idea of such tactics was horrifying to species that had fought wars. According to strict codes of honor for millennia, Zexathara raised her voice above the noise. Perhaps it is time to consider that our honorable methods are not working against an enemy who has no honor. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was deep and rumbling, belonging to one of the massive rock-like Tethians. What do we know of their current military capabilities? They have a small fleet, Zexathara replied. Maybe 50 ships total. But those ships are fast and well-armed. Their leader is someone called General Nathan Cross. He has agreed to meet with us to discuss the situation. Elder Veltharion's form dimmed with worry. This is a dangerous path, Ambassador. Young species are unpredictable. They do not understand the delicate balance we have maintained in this galaxy. What balance? Zexathara's voice was bitter now. The Krillians are destroying that balance with every world they burn. Our traditional methods are failing because our enemy does not play by our rules. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that bringing in an unknown species was too risky. Others pointed out that the current situation was already desperate. The Vortanians were not the only ones suffering. 3 other species had lost colonies to Krillian attacks in the past year. Finally, the Zarian representative called for order. We must vote on this proposal, all in favor of requesting assistance from the human military. The voting was close. Many of the older species voted against the idea, but the younger races and those who had already suffered Krillian attacks supported it. In the end, the measure passed by just 12 votes. Elder Veltharian's light flickered sadly as he announced the result. The motion carries. We will contact the humans and request their assistance, but I fear we may come to regret this decision. As the council session ended and the representatives began to leave, the Zarian delegate approached Zexithara. You have gotten what you wanted, Ambassador. I hope you understand what you may have unleashed. What do you mean? Zexithara asked. The crystalline being's response sent chills through the translator. Chaos follows in the wake of species who fight not for territory or resources but for ideals they cannot even properly define. The humans fight for concepts they call freedom and justice. Such things cannot be measured or contained. Zexithara watched as the Zarian floated away, leaving her alone in the vast chamber. She had won the vote, but the warnings of the elder species echoed in her mind. Still, her people were dying, and traditional methods had failed them. The message was sent to human space that same day. It was a simple request for military assistance, translated into the basic language the humans used for interstellar communication. The response came back within hours, much faster than anyone had expected. We accept, was all it said. General, Nathan Cross will arrive within 1 week to assess the situation. As news of the decision spread throughout the galaxy, reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated the possibility of new tactics against the Krillian threat. Others worried about the implications of involving a species known for their aggressive and unpredictable nature. Deep in space, the Krillian High Command received intelligence about the Council's decision. Their response was swift and decisive. If the galaxy wanted to escalate the conflict by bringing in new players, the Krillians would show them what true escalation looked like. The die was cast, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Lisa Hayes was drinking her morning coffee when the priority message came through. The bridge of the UES Defiant was quiet during the night shift, with only essential crew members at their stations. The communication officer, Lieutenant Danny Foster, looked up from his console with confusion on his face. Captain, we're receiving a transmission on the first contact frequency. It's coming through 12 different translation matrices. Lisa set down her coffee and walked over to the communication station. The first contact frequency had been established 3 years ago when humanity made initial contact with galactic civilization, but it was rarely used for anything important. Put it through the main screen, she ordered. The message that appeared was formal and stilted, clearly translated through multiple alien languages before reaching human understanding. It spoke of a galactic conflict, of species under attack, and of a request for military assistance from something called the Galactic Council. Lisa read the message twice before calling Admiral Jake Morrison on Earth. The conversation that followed would change the course of human history. Within 6 hours, every major military leader in human space was gathered in the war room deep beneath the Pentagon. Admiral Morrison stood at the head of a massive holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of the local galaxy. Red zones marked areas of Krillian control, while blue areas showed Council territory. Gentlemen and ladies, Morrison began, we have been invited to join our first interstellar war. Colonel Amy Peterson, head of tactical operations, studied the display with intense focus. What do we know about the combatants? Dr. Ben Clark, the civilian expert on alien cultures, stepped forward. He had been studying galactic civilization since first contact and knew more about alien military doctrine than anyone else in human space. The species involved have been fighting wars the same way for thousands of years, he explained. Large fleets meet in open space, exchange fire and formation, and continue until one side withdraws or is destroyed. There are strict rules about targeting civilians, proper battle formations, and what they call honorable conduct. Captain Kelly Turner, who commanded the stealth ship Horizon, raised her hand. What about their technology? Superior to ours in most ways, Clark admitted. Their ships are larger, their weapons more powerful, and their shields stronger. But they're also predictable. Every species fights exactly the same way their ancestors did 10,000 years ago. Admiral Morrison pulled up tactical data on the Krillian forces. The enemy appears to be different. Intelligence suggests they ignore the traditional rules of engagement. They attack civilians and destroy entire colonies. Sounds familiar, muttered Commander Ryan Scott, who had served in the Mars Rebellion. What are our orders? Morrison looked around the room at the assembled officers. These were men and women who had been forged in the brutal conflicts of Earth's history. They had fought in the water wars, the resource conflicts, and the colonial rebellions. They understood war in a way that the peaceful galactic species could not imagine. Our orders are simple, Morrison said. Assess the situation, provide assistance if possible, and represent humanity's interests. Captain Hayes, you will command the expeditionary force. Lisa nodded. She had expected this assignment. The Defiant was one of humanity's newest ships, designed for deep space operations. What's my mission parameters? Wide discretion, Morrison replied. The Galactic Council expects us to follow their battle doctrines and protocols. Whether or not you choose to do so is up to you. Dr. Clark looked worried. Admiral, we need to be careful here. These species have maintained galactic peace for millennia through careful diplomacy and established procedures. If we upset their balance is already upset. Colonel Peterson interrupted. The Krillians are winning this war, using tactics the Council cannot counter. Maybe it's time for a new approach. The meeting continued for several more hours as they planned the human response. 3 ships would be sent. The Defiant under Captain Hayes, the Vigilant under Commander Scott, and the Horizon under Captain Turner. Total personnel would be less than 200, a tiny force by galactic standards. As the officers prepared to leave, Admiral Morrison called Captain Hayes aside. Lisa, I need you to understand something. These aliens have been watching us since first contact. They know we're different from them, but they don't really understand how different. They're expecting us to be civilized. Lisa smiled grimly. And if we're not? Then we show them what humans do when civilized doesn't work. The 3 ships departed Earth 2 days later. The journey to the war zone would take a week, giving the crews time to study everything they could about galactic military doctrine and Krillian tactics. Captain Hayes spent hours reviewing battle recordings provided by the Vortanians. The footage showed massive fleets arranged in perfect formations, exchanging fire at long range like naval battles from Earth's ancient history. Ships would fight until their shields failed, then withdraw in good order. Casualties were surprisingly light, and battles could last for days or even weeks. It's like watching a dance, observed Lieutenant Foster as they watched another battle. Recording. Everyone knows the steps. Everyone except the Krillians, Hayes replied. The enemy forces were more aggressive, willing to take losses to achieve objectives. But even they fought in predictable patterns, using overwhelming force, rather than clever tactics. Commander Scott joined them on the bridge as they approached the rendezvous point. I've been thinking about this, Captain. What if we're not supposed to win this war? What do you mean? Think about it. These species have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Maybe war isn't about winning for them. Maybe it's about maintaining balance, showing strength, following traditions. Captain Turner's voice came over the communication system from the Horizon. Approaching the rendezvous coordinates now, I'm detecting multiple alien vessels. Hayes looked at the tactical display as dozens of alien ships appeared on screen. They were beautiful in their own way, sleek and graceful, arranged in perfect formations. But to human eyes trained in the brutal practicalities of warfare, they looked like targets. Open a channel to the fleet commander, Hayes ordered. The face that appeared on screen was Ambassador Zexithara, though Hayes didn't know her name yet. The Vortanian looked tired and desperate. her blue skin pale with exhaustion. "Human vessels, this is Ambassador Zexithara. We welcome you to our cause. Admiral Kethmore will brief you on proper battle protocols." "Understood," Hayes replied. "We're ready to assist." As the human ships moved into formation with the Galactic fleet, none of the aliens realized that they had just made the most dangerous decision in their species' history. They had asked for help from a species that viewed war, not as a ritual to be performed, but as a problem to be solved. The Krillians were about to learn the difference. Admiral Kethmore of the Vortanian fleet was a veteran of 37 battles. He had fought the Krillians for 6 months and knew their tactics well. As he explained the battle plan to the human commanders, he felt confident that these newcomers would follow proper military protocol. "The Krillian fleet will approach from the Nexus system," he told Captain Hayes and her officers. "Our combined forces will meet them at the designated coordinates. We will form battle lines, exchange fire, and force them to withdraw, Captain." Hayes studied the tactical display with a frown. The plan showed hundreds of ships arranged in neat rows, facing each other across empty space like armies from ancient Earth. "How long do these battles usually last?" "Anywhere from 6 hours to 3 days, Admiral Kethmore replied proudly. "The Battle of Zirion lasted almost a week. It was considered a masterpiece of tactical warfare." Commander Scott looked puzzled. "But you didn't win that battle, did you?" "Win?" Kethmore seemed confused by the question. "We fought with honor. Both sides withdrew when casualties became unacceptable. That is how civilized warfare is conducted. Captain Seo." Turner exchanged glances with Captain Hayes. Both women had served in the brutal conflicts of human space, where battles were won and lost, not politely concluded when things became difficult. "Admiral," Hayes said carefully, "what if we tried a different approach?" "Different how?" Kethmore's translator made him sound worried. "What if we didn't meet them head-on? What if we used the asteroid field near the third planet as cover? Or attacked their supply lines instead of their main fleet?" The alien admiral's skin changed from blue to a darker purple, which the humans had learned meant distress. "Captain Hayes, there are protocols for space combat. Rules that have kept the galaxy civilized for thousands of years. We cannot simply ignore them. Even if following those rules means losing the war, better to lose with honor than win through barbarism." The battle began exactly as Admiral Kethmore had planned. The Krillian fleet approached in perfect formation, their black ships gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. The Galactic Council forces moved to meet them, hundreds of vessels arranged in textbook battle lines. Captain Hayes watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the two fleets slowly approached each other. It was like watching a medieval joust played out with starships. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Foster. "They're going to slug it out at point-blank range until somebody gives up." "Not us," Hayes said quietly. She opened a channel to her. "Other ships. Ryan, Kelly, you know what to do." Commander Scott grinned from the bridge of the Vigilant. "Copy that, Captain. Breaking formation now." The 3 human ships suddenly peeled away from the galactic formation, moving at speeds that surprised the alien commanders. Instead of joining the main battle, they curved around behind the Krillian fleet. Admiral Kethmore's voice crackled over the communication system. "Human vessels, you are out of position. Return to formation immediately." "Negative," Hayes replied. "We're going to try something different." The main battle began as expected. Hundreds of ships exchanged fire in orderly lines, their shields flashing as energy beams struck home. It was impressive and beautiful, but also completely predictable. Meanwhile, the human ships had reached the rear of the Krillian formation. Captain Turner's stealth ship, the Horizon, had completely disappeared from sensors. Commander Scott's Vigilant was racing toward the enemy supply convoy, and Captain Hayes was studying the Krillian command structure. "There," she said, pointing at the tactical display. "That large ship in the center. It's not firing at our main fleet." "Command. Vessel," observed Lieutenant Foster. "Should we engage?" "Oh yes," Hayes smiled. "Target their communication arrays first." The Defiant's weapons were smaller than the massive guns on the galactic dreadnoughts, but they were precise. The first salvo took out the Krillian flagship's primary communication system. The second destroyed their sensor array. Within minutes, the enemy command ship was blind and deaf. At the same time, Commander Scott was wreaking havoc among the supply ships. The Krillian rearguard had never seen anything like human tactics. Ships that were supposed to fight in formation were darting around like fighters, hitting targets and disappearing before return fire could be coordinated. Captain Turner's Horizon struck the killing blow. Using her ship's stealth systems, she had positioned herself directly under the main Krillian battle line. When she fired her weapons straight up into the unprotected undersides of the enemy ships, the results were devastating. The Krillian formation began to collapse. Without communication from their command ship, individual captains started making their own decisions. Some tried to turn to face the human ships attacking from behind. Others attempted to maintain formation. The result was chaos. Admiral Kethmore watched in horror as the carefully ordered battle dissolved into what looked like a street fight. "This is not how wars are fought," he transmitted to Captain Hayes. "There are rules, protocols, honor codes that must be followed. There are winning and losing," Hayes replied coldly. "Which would you prefer?" The battle that was supposed to last hours was over in 20 minutes. The Krillian fleet, confused and leaderless, began to withdraw in disorder. Several ships had been destroyed, others damaged, and their entire formation was broken. But the IE cost was higher than anyone realized. Every alien ship in the battle had recorded what the humans had done. Within hours, reports were being sent to military commands across the galaxy. The humans had ignored every rule of civilized warfare. They had attacked command vessels, targeted support ships, and used deception and stealth. Ambassador Zexathara contacted Captain Hayes directly after the battle. Her face on the screen showed a mixture of gratitude and horror. "Captain, your tactics were more effective, but what you did was not warfare as we understand it." "It was warfare as we understand it," Hayes replied. "We saw a problem and we solved it. But the dishonor of it, attacking from behind, targeting support vessels, using stealth to strike at defenseless ships. Those ships weren't defenseless. They had weapons and shields. They just weren't expecting anyone to actually use tactics." The argument continued for an hour, but it was clear that something fundamental had changed. The humans had won their first galactic battle, but they had done so by breaking every rule the galaxy considered sacred. News of the battle spread quickly. Some species were impressed by human effectiveness. Others were horrified by human methods. But everyone agreed on one thing. The humans fought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The Krillian High Command received detailed reports of the battle within 6 hours. Their response was swift and decisive. If the galaxy wanted to change the rules of warfare, the Krillians would show them what total war really meant. Orders went out to every Krillian fleet. No more honor, no more protocol, no more mercy. The humans had shown that the old ways were obsolete. The Krillians would adapt accordingly. The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than human tactics. There were human tactics when the other side stopped playing by rules too. The emergency alert reached Admiral Jake Morrison at 3 a.m, Earth time. The message was short and terrifying. The Krillians had declared total war on humanity and were sending their entire fleet toward human space. Morrison was dressed and in the command center within 10 minutes. The holographic display showed a sight that chilled him to the bone. Over 2,000 Krillian ships were moving toward Earth and the human colonies. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked Colonel Peterson, who was already at her station analyzing the enemy movement. 18 hours until they reach our outer defenses," she replied grimly. "Their fleet is massive, Admiral. We've never seen anything like it." Dr. Ben Clark looked up from his alien communications console. "I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. The Krillians have abandoned all their traditional warfare protocols. They're destroying everything in their path. No attempts to preserve civilian populations. No honor codes, no surrender offers." Morrison studied the tactical display. Humanity had 57 combat-ready ships scattered across their territory. The Krillians had 40 times that number, and their ships were larger and more heavily armed. "Get me Captain Hayes," Morrison ordered. Lisa Hayes appeared on the communication screen from the bridge of the Defiant, which was 3 days away from Earth at maximum speed. "Admiral, we're already moving to intercept, but we won't make it in time." "I know," Morrison said. "Lisa, I need you to understand something. The rules have changed. The Krillians are no longer fighting a civilized war. They're coming to wipe out humanity completely." Hayes nodded grimly. "What are your orders?" Morrison looked around the command center at the faces of his staff. These were good people who had signed up to defend humanity among the stars. Now they were facing extinction. "No limits," he said quietly. "Do whatever it takes to survive. Use every advantage we have. Fight like humans." The first attacks came at the edge of human space. The mining colony on Kepler Station had 40,000 people and no military defenses. The Krillian fleet arrived and opened fire without warning or communication. Within an hour, the entire station was destroyed. News of the massacre reached Earth just as the main Krillian fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Morrison watched from the command center as the enemy ships took up positions around Mars. They were not arranging themselves in the traditional battle formations. Instead, they were spreading out to surround and destroy everything in the system. "Launch all available ships," Morrison ordered. "Send the evacuation signal to Luna Base and the orbital stations." Commander Tony Rodriguez was in charge of Earth's defense fleet. His ships were outnumbered 50-1, but they were defending their home. As the human vessels moved to intercept the Krillian force, Rodriguez opened a channel to all his captains. "This is it, people," he said. "They came here to destroy us. They killed 40,000 civilians without warning. Show them what happens when you threaten human families." The battle for Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans threw out every rule of civilized warfare. They used suicide attacks, ramming damaged ships into enemy vessels. They targeted the Krillian command ships with nuclear weapons. They even used the orbital defense platforms around Earth as giant bombs, detonating them when enemy ships came too close. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the destroyer Phoenix, became famous for what the aliens would later call the scorched void tactic. When her ship was too damaged to continue fighting, she set course for the largest Krillian dreadnought and overloaded her fusion reactor. The explosion took out 3 enemy ships and crippled 2 others. But humanity's most effective weapon was not their technology or their willingness to sacrifice. It was their ability to adapt and learn during combat. Every time the Krillians tried a new formation or tactic, the human ships would respond with something unexpected. Commander Rodriguez realized that the enemy was trying to use their numbers to surround and destroy Earth's defenses. Instead of trying to fight them ship to ship, he ordered all human vessels to retreat toward Earth's moon. The Krillians followed, thinking they had the humans trapped. What they found instead was the largest minefield in galactic history. Humanity had been preparing for invasion since first contact, and Luna Base was surrounded by thousands of hidden weapons platforms and automated defense systems. The Krillian fleet flew into a trap that cost them over 300 ships. But they kept coming. Even with massive losses, they still outnumbered the human defenders by 20-1. That was when Captain Hayes and the expeditionary force arrived. The Defiant, Vigilant, and Horizon had been joined by ships from several alien species who had decided to help humanity. The Vortanians sent 20 vessels. The Chithrax provided support ships. Even some of the peaceful Luminari had armed their exploration vessels to assist in Earth's defense. But it was the human tactics that turned the tide. Hayes took one look at the massive Krillian fleet and made a decision that shocked every alien commander. "All ships ignore the main fleet," she ordered. "Target their supply vessels and support ships. Cut off their fuel and ammunition." "Captain," protested Admiral Kethmore from his Vortanian flagship, "those are not military targets. It is dishonorable to attack support vessels." "Honor won't save Earth," Hayes replied coldly. "Ryan, take your squadron and hit their fuel depot ships. Kelly, use the Horizon to destroy their ammunition carriers. I'm going after their command vessels." The battle raged for 6 hours. The humans and their alien allies used every dirty trick they had learned in centuries of warfare. They attacked from multiple directions, used the gravity of planets and moons to slingshot around enemy formations, and even turned asteroid mining equipment into weapons. The Krillians fought back with desperate fury, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had abandoned their own traditions and protocols without understanding how to fight the human way. They were caught between two styles of warfare and effective at neither. When the dust settled, the Krillian fleet was in full retreat. They had lost over half their ships and had failed to destroy Earth, but the cost to humanity was enormous. 34 human ships had been destroyed, and thousands of people had died defending their homeworld. More importantly, the galaxy had seen what total war looked like when humans were involved. The footage of human ships ramming enemy vessels, of suicide attacks and scorched Earth tactics, spread throughout galactic civilization within days. Some species were horrified by what they had witnessed. Others began to reconsider their own military doctrines. But everyone understood that humanity had changed the nature of warfare forever. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The question was no longer whether humans could help win the war against the Krillians. The question was whether the galaxy could survive having humans as part of it. The surrender came not with a great battle, but with a simple message transmitted across all frequencies. The Krillian High Command announced their complete and unconditional surrender to the combined forces of the Galactic Council and humanity. Admiral Jake Morrison read the message 3 times before he believed it. In 18 months, the war that was supposed to last decades had ended. The Krillian Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for years, was asking for peace. But the manner of their defeat had shaken every species in known space. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was held on the neutral world of Sanctum Prime. For the first time in galactic history, human representatives sat as equals at the Great Table. Admiral Morrison, Captain Lisa Hayes, and Dr. Ben Clark took their places among beings who had ruled the stars for millennia. Elder Veltharion of the Luminary spoke first. His energy formed dim with what humans had learned to recognize as deep concern. We invited humanity to join our conflict expecting auxiliary support. Instead, we have witnessed the complete transformation of galactic warfare doctrine. The statistics were displayed on the Great Chamber's central screen. Human-led forces had accomplished in 18 months what traditional galactic strategy estimated would take 50 years. The Krillian military was not just defeated, it was completely dismantled. Their ability to wage war had been systematically destroyed. Commander Clixtor of the Chethrax military clicked nervously as he spoke. The methods used have violated every convention of civilized warfare. Attacks on supply lines, targeting of command vessels, psychological warfare designed to break enemy morale. And yet, interrupted Ambassador Zexathera, my people are alive because of those methods. The Krillians would have destroyed us if we had continued fighting the old way. The chamber fell silent as the crystalline Xerian representative spoke. The question before us is whether we can coexist with a species that treats war as a problem to be solved, rather than a ritual to be performed. Admiral Morrison stood to address the assembly. He was a simple man from Earth who had never expected to be sitting among the rulers of galactic civilization. Members of the Council, with respect, you're asking the wrong question. Explain, requested Elder Veltharion. You're worried about how we fight wars, but the real question is whether you want to keep fighting them at all. Dr. Clark activated a holographic display showing military statistics from across the galaxy. Before human involvement, the average galactic conflict lasted 23 years and resulted in millions of casualties. In the past 18 months, 3 major conflicts have been resolved through human military intervention with minimal losses. Captain Hayes added, the Krillian threat has been permanently ended. The Hegemony War was concluded when the aggressors realized they couldn't match human tactics. The border disputes in the Outer Rim were settled through negotiation, after both sides saw what happened to species that fought humans. A new voice joined the discussion. It came from the most unexpected source, a Krillian delegation that had requested permission to address the Council. Their leader, War Master Theclor, had been one of humanity's fiercest opponents. Honored Council members, Theclor said, my people have learned a hard lesson. We believed strength came from size of fleets and power of weapons. The humans showed us that strength comes from the will to do whatever is necessary to protect what you value. The chamber erupted in surprised whispers and clicks and harmonics. No one had expected the Krillians to speak at the peace negotiations. Theclor continued, "We surrender not because we lack ships or weapons. We surrender because the humans fight as if the survival of their species depends on every battle. They cannot be defeated by any force that is not willing to match their commitment." Elder Veltharion pulsed with confusion. "What are you saying?" I'm saying that humans do not fight for territory or resources or honor. They fight for survival, for family, for ideas they call freedom and justice. Such motivation cannot be broken by traditional warfare." Admiral Morrison nodded respectfully to the Krillian leader. "War Master Theclor speaks the truth. We didn't set out to change galactic warfare. We simply fought the way humans have always fought when everything we care about is threatened." The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that human methods were too dangerous to be allowed. Others pointed out that galactic peace had never been more secure. The older species worried about traditions being destroyed. The younger races celebrated the end of centuries-old conflicts. Finally, the Xerian representative called for order. "We must decide how to proceed. Do we attempt to restrict human military involvement? Or do we accept that the galaxy has fundamentally changed?" The vote was closer than anyone expected, but in the end, pragmatism won over tradition. The new Galactic Accords were signed 6 months later with humanity as a full member of the Council. The key provisions were simple, but revolutionary. Human military doctrine would be considered a strategic asset of the Galactic Council. Human forces could be deployed to end conflicts, but only with unanimous council approval and only when member species faced existential threats. Most importantly, the Morrison Doctrine was added to the Galactic Charter. It stated simply, "The Galactic Council acknowledges that involving humanity in warfare will fundamentally alter the nature of that conflict. This decision should not be made lightly." Admiral Morrison smiled as he signed the historic document. Around him, representatives of dozens of species added their own signatures or energy patterns or crystalline resonances to the accord. Dr. Clark leaned over to whisper to his commander, "Do you think they really understand what they've agreed to?" Morrison looked around the chamber at the alien faces, some grateful, some worried, all changed by their encounter with humanity. "They understand that the galaxy is safer now, whether they understand the price of that safety is something we'll find out over time." Captain Hayes added her signature to the document and looked up at the great chamber. "At least now when someone starts a war, they'll have to think twice about whether they want humans involved." As the ceremony concluded and representatives began to leave, Elder Veltharion approached the human delegation. "Admiral Morrison, I must ask, are you pleased with what you have accomplished?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "Elder, we came here to help allies defend themselves against an aggressor. We did that. If changing the galaxy was the price of protecting innocent people, then yes, I'm pleased. And if other species learn to fight as humans do, then maybe there will be fewer wars worth fighting." The ancient being of light pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps that was the lesson we needed to learn. Not how to fight better, but why fighting should be the last choice, not the first one. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, reports were already coming in from across the galaxy. 3 border disputes had been settled through negotiation rather than combat. 2 aggressive species had suddenly become interested in diplomatic solutions. The mere possibility of human military intervention was changing behavior throughout known space. Humanity had found its place among the stars, but on their own terms. They had shown the galaxy that some problems could only be solved through absolute commitment and the will to do whatever was necessary. The warning had been given and ignored. Now the galaxy lived with the consequences, and for the first time in millennia, it was truly at peace.